Okay guys, so the question, can we trust the Bible? Well, that's a great question. I mean, the Bible is a pretty old book. As we'll see in another video, there's different translations of it. Can we trust what it says in it? Well, if you think about it like this, if you're in a court of law and you are asking someone to come forward with evidence of something, say that someone committed a crime, what would you look for? Well, the things that you look for in a court of law, you look for multiple people saying that this has happened. You look for multiple witnesses. You would say that you would want the witnesses to have either written down or spoken their testimony as close to the original events. If it's close to the events, then they've got more chance of remembering what actually happened, right? The third thing is you want some plausibility in their explanation compared to, say, other possibilities that might happen. And the fourth thing is you want to ask, what's the motive for them giving that evidence? Well, the thing is with the Bible is that the Old Testament especially was copied by scribes, so people didn't have their own personal copies of the Bible. In fact, they would go to the synagogue to hear the Bible read aloud, and there were multiple copies. Scribes would copy them, that was their job. In fact, they would spend all day just copying this out so that it could be taken to other synagogues. Eventually it was translated into Greek, something we call the Septuagint, and the thousands of copies that are there of the Old Testament especially, they are all pointing to the same thing. They all say the same thing. In fact, recently in the I think it was 1948, they found something called the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were ancient copies of the Old Testament and some of the New Testament that were found in jars in a desert near the Dead Sea by the Qumran community, they think, of the people that did that, that had those there. And those copies were ancient. They were dating back to the 1st century. And guess what? They tallied up with exactly what we have, apart from some minor kind of spelling mistakes and some copying errors that we think. The New Testament, most of that was written in the 1st century, and we have multiple people attesting to the fact that these are eyewitness accounts. The New Testament letters that we have actually were distributed across the Middle East, so there's not like one central place where they were all kept and then kind of farmed out. And we have copies of these letters that were copied and sent on to other churches that date back to the 1st century, which is very close to the events that they are talking about. If you compare that with other ancient texts, for example, the Greek poet Homer, he wrote something called Odyssey and the Iliad. The work of Homer, I mean, we have about 643 manuscripts, and they are dating earliest is we reckon about 500 years after it was actually written. Compare that to the Bible, and the New Testament alone, we have 24,000 manuscripts. The earliest of them is within 50 years of the actual events being happened. The New Testament content itself suggests that actually most of it was written from anywhere between sort of 20 to 50 years after the actual events that they were talking about this. And this is especially important because a lot of the Gospels are written as eyewitness accounts. If the eyewitnesses, if the accounts, are eyewitness accounts and they're written close to the time, then effectively what the authors were saying was, if you don't believe me, go and ask the other people who are alive to verify it and back it up. There are so far no recorded archaeological finds that contradict what we see written in the Bible, which is another additional thing that makes us trust the Bible. What's interesting as well is when you look at the explanations that are offered in there for what was happening, is what you don't get is a kind of like a whitewashed perfect account. It's not mythological, it's actually very honest. Look at the New Testament, you get the disciples who claim to have written this saying actually that they got things wrong, that they doubted, that they messed things up, that they had crazy ideas and Jesus would correct them. If these were all made up accounts that we couldn't trust, then actually what you would expect is for them all to be kind of whitewashed in a way that made them look really, really great. The other thing that's really interesting is that there is some divergence between the accounts. All of the different eyewitnesses don't say exactly word for word the same thing, exactly as you would expect if they were actually recounting real events. If they all said exactly the same thing, then you would perhaps wonder if they had colluded on it to make it say something that didn't actually happen. The final thing that makes me want to trust the Bible is actually the consequences of, especially the New Testament writers, actually composing and writing down what they saw happen, especially in the life of Jesus. For nearly all of them, it led to death, certain death. Why would you do that if actually it was a lie that you had just made up, or it was a myth that you were sort of, constructing just so that people would think that you're something a bit more special than actually you are? For most of the people that wrote that down, it led to death. Why would you do that for a lie? So for me, I feel like there is really strong evidence for why you can trust the Bible. But what do you think? Do some research, do some digging around as to what it means for you to help you to trust in the reliability of the Bible that we read.